There is a biological shift that happens after 50 that most people are completely unprepared for. Not because it is rare, because nobody talks about it in practical terms. You have probably heard that you lose muscle as you age, sarcopenia. The slow disappearance of lean mass that starts in your 30s and accelerates dramatically after 50. But here is what most people do not understand. The muscle you lose after 50 is not just a cosmetic problem. It is not just about strength or appearance. Muscle is your metabolic engine. It is your insulin sensitivity reservoir. It is your fat-burning machinery. It is your immune system's primary protein source during illness. And once it is gone, it is extraordinarily difficult to get back. The single most important nutritional intervention available to anyone over 50 is not a supplement. It is not a superfood. It is protein. And most people over 50 are eating dramatically less of it than their body actually needs. But first, I need to tell you why your protein requirements after 50 are fundamentally different from what they were at 30. Before 50, your muscles respond to protein with relative efficiency. You eat a meal containing 20 grams of protein, and your muscle cells initiate protein synthesis, the process of repairing and building muscle tissue. This response is fairly predictable and requires a moderate stimulus, but after 50, something changes in the muscle cells themselves. Researchers call it anabolic resistance. Your muscle cells become less sensitive to the protein signal. The same 20 grams of protein that triggered robust muscle protein synthesis at 30 now produces a significantly smaller response at 55. Your muscles are hearing the signal, but responding to it much more quietly, which means you need more protein per meal to achieve the same muscle building and muscle preserving response, not slightly more. Research published in 2025 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirmed that adults over 50 require approximately 40% more protein per meal than younger adults to achieve equivalent rates of muscle protein synthesis. The same stimulus that maintained muscle at 30 now produces muscle loss at 55. And most people have no idea this shift has happened. Here is what actually happens to your body when protein intake is insufficient after 50. And this is where it gets genuinely alarming. The first consequence is accelerated muscle loss. Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, proceeds at approximately 1 to 2% per year after age 50 in adults who do not actively resist it through protein intake and resistance training. That sounds modest until you calculate the compound effect. A person who loses 2% of muscle mass per year from age 50 to 70 has lost 40% of their muscle mass over 20 years. 40%. That is not a subtle change. That is the difference between independence and dependence, between metabolic health and metabolic disease, between a body that burns fat efficiently and one that stores everything it eats. The second consequence is cascading metabolic dysfunction. Muscle is the primary site of insulin-mediated glucose disposal, meaning your muscles are responsible for clearing the majority of glucose from your bloodstream after meals. When muscle mass declines, your body's ability to manage blood sugar declines with it. Insulin resistance develops not from dietary choices alone, but from the simple loss of the metabolic tissue that handles glucose. And insulin resistance drives visceral fat accumulation, which drives inflammation, which drives further muscle loss. The cycle is self-reinforcing, and inadequate protein after 50 is one of its primary accelerators. And now, the twist that most people over 50 never hear. The solution to anabolic resistance is not just eating more protein total. It is eating more protein per meal, specifically enough to cross the threshold required to trigger full muscle protein synthesis despite the reduced sensitivity. Research published in 2025 confirmed that the minimum effective dose for maximally stimulating muscle protein synthesis in adults over 50 is approximately 40 grams of complete protein per meal, compared to 20 to 25 grams in younger adults. Most people over 50 are eating 15 to 20 grams of protein at breakfast, often from yogurt, a single egg, or toast with peanut butter, and wondering why their muscle mass keeps declining despite feeling like they eat well. The threshold has shifted, and the food choices that were adequate at 30 are producing muscle loss at 55. Now here is the additional piece that most people never connect. The one that explains why protein timing matters as much as protein quantity after 50. Your muscles have what researchers call a protein synthetic window, a period of elevated sensitivity to protein following exercise or following an overnight fast. Before 50, this window is relatively wide. Your muscles remain receptive to protein for several hours after exercise. After 50, this window narrows significantly. Research published in 2025 in Sports Medicine confirmed that muscle protein synthesis in adults over 50 drops back to baseline significantly faster after exercise than in younger adults, meaning the window for maximally effective protein intake is shorter and more time sensitive. The practical implication is clear. Protein after exercise needs to be consumed within 30 to 60 minutes in adults over 50, not 2 to 3 hours later. And the first meal after an overnight fast should contain the full 40-gram threshold dose, not spread across smaller portions throughout the morning. And now, the final twist, the one that reframes everything about aging and protein. Most people think of protein as a muscle-building nutrient, something relevant for athletes and bodybuilders. After 50, protein is a survival nutrient. It is what keeps your metabolism running efficiently. It is what maintains your insulin sensitivity as your muscle mass tries to decline. It is what your immune system draws on during illness or infection, stripping amino acids from muscle tissue when dietary protein is insufficient. It is what maintains bone density, because the collagen matrix of bone is a protein structure that requires dietary protein to maintain, and it is what determines whether the fat-burning machinery in your body stays operational or gradually shuts down as lean mass disappears. Eating adequate protein after 50 is not about aesthetics. It is about maintaining the biological infrastructure that everything else depends on. Here is your protein protocol starting today. Target 40 grams of complete protein per meal, not per day, spread however it happens to fall. Complete protein sources include eggs, chicken, fish, beef, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and whey protein. If you use plant proteins, make sure they are combined to provide all 9 essential amino acids. Eat your protein before your carbohydrates at each meal to maximize insulin sensitivity and minimize the insulin response that would otherwise blunt protein synthesis. And if you do any resistance training, even body weight exercise, consume your 40-gram protein meal within 60 minutes of finishing, not 2 hours later. Within 60 minutes, the window is real. And after 50, it closes faster than you think. Drop a comment and tell me, how much protein are you actually eating per meal right now? I want to know. And if this video changed how you think about protein and aging, subscribe.